بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا Muhammad وبعد. I assume most of you enjoyed the last week's lectures as being the clearest that we've had so far. I apologize for that. Well, last time we left off, we finished the what did we leave off last time? It's been a long time. We finished Hujjat Sunnah, as proving that this is Hujjah. And we discussed some, not necessarily minor points, but some points about the relationship between the Qur'an and the Sunnah, which one of them takes precedence, Nusul al-Fiqh. No, we had to pick it up again. That's right. You were not here to represent your madhab. Yeah. So today we have to broaden our concept of the Sunnah. And how did we define Sunnah before? There's no chalk here today. Rahman, how did we define Sunnah? Remember you and I had a big argument about it. Definition of Sunnah according to the Usuliyin. It's been a long time, huh? This is how you people are after spring break. You come back after 1 week. Definition of Sunnah, long time ago. Okay, we define Sunnah as the action and the statement or saying. Now, and tacit approval. Okay. And I said actually this one isn't necessary because it is part of the actions of the Prophet ﷺ. And with respect to statements, we're not interested in the fact that he spoke. We're interested in the effect or what the words that he said, what do they mean. Yes.
Why the word tacit?
Tacit is not explicit. If you approve of something by not saying anything. هذا الإقرار. طيب. So inshallah today we want to widen our perspective a little bit and discuss. Today we're going to start discussing one of the most difficult topics, or at least the topic in which there's most difference of opinion among the ulama. If we think of the Prophet ﷺ and some of his goals, some of his duties, some of them we talked about before, and it was his obligation to convey the message, to invite people to the message, to make clear the message, in other words, make clear the meanings of the Qur'an. It was also his duty to make tazkiyah, or to bring up the Muslims in the correct way. Well, in order to do that, he used different methods. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Qur'an, and there's many reasons for why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Qur'an with the messenger. And he did not just, for example, reveal the book to a mountain and someone goes and finds it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed it to a messenger, to a human being. And there are many reasons behind that. And in order to fulfill his mission, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used different methods. And he used different methods to convey the message, and all of those different methods have some effect in usul al-fiqh. And all of them should be dealt with in a specific way. Well, if we think, for example, of how someone is to teach someone else, or how the educationalists say basically there's three ways of teaching or passing on knowledge to someone else. Right? Correct me if I'm wrong. One is by the stated word. And by statements you tell people such and such and you give them sentences conveying the truth, and this is one way to teach them. This is, for example, the way of the Qur'an. And that the Qur'an is actually words that you listen to and you ponder over, and this is one way of conveying information. And much of the Sunnah is of this type. That the Prophet ﷺ spoke to people, he gave khutb, he gave lectures, for example Friday khutb, He answered questions and so forth. Statements is one of the easiest ways to convey information which is conceptual. And it's something that you cannot actually show. So for example, with respect to the Day of Judgment and things like that, the Prophet ﷺ had to rely on statements in order to give conceptual meanings of what will occur during that time. The second way of passing on knowledge to another is by your action. And by setting an example for other people, or by demonstrating the thing that you're trying to teach. Well, this plays almost with respect to the Sunnah, if you read the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and this plays almost as an important role as statements. And if someone sees the teaching being implemented, it's much easier for him to understand what you're talking about, and it's much easier for him to grasp exactly what you're referring to. For example, in some of the poorer schools, and they don't have labs. Maybe some of you grew up like this. And when you were when I was in junior high, we had a chemistry lab. We could go do all our experiments there. Some people, they just have the book, and they read the book and says that if you do such and such with this chemical and that chemical, you get a reaction. But the one who just reads it compared to the one who's actually doing it, and their understanding and also their keeping of that knowledge, and it's completely different between the two. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and in one of the ways that he taught, one of the ways that he conveyed the message was through his actions. And by demonstrating things to people, this is one of the ways that he conveyed the Sunnah. Well, an example of this type, how that sometimes there's difficult topics that if you don't actually see them being performed, you will not understand them properly, is with respect to the Hajj, for example. If you do not know what the different actions of the Hajj are and what they look like, you've never seen them before, it will be difficult to understand from the Hadith exactly what they're referring to. Well, this might be one of the reasons why Ibn Hazm, who never made Hajj, when he came to his book, when it came to the topic of Hajj and Muhalla, has many strange fatwa because he's never seen the Hajj and he doesn't know exactly what he's referring to. So, demonstrating what is going on is a very important way of conveying information. Well, this is one of the ways of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And when it comes to usul al-fiqh, we have to consider his actions as a source of fiqh. And third, which is basically the third one up there, the third way of conveying knowledge is for the teacher to supervise and either to approve or disapprove of what the people are doing. Well, this the Prophet ﷺ used to do also. He used to keep an eye on what his followers were doing, and if they did something incorrect, he would correct them. And if they did something correctly, he would either be quiet or he would praise that action. Be quiet would be that one tacit approval. And it came to be the case that the Sahaba themselves would do acts in front of the Prophet ﷺ, and in order for the Prophet ﷺ to see them doing it, in order for the Prophet ﷺ to either approve of their action or disapprove. So now if we try to, from usul al-fiqh point of view, if we try to capture all of the different acts of the Sunnah, we see that in fact there are much more than these three. These are the three basic ways of passing on knowledge, but the Prophet ﷺ used other methods. I guess I'll put them here. One is the Prophet ﷺ statement. I just finally figured out a good way to do this with English and Arabic. Put the number in the middle and put the Arabic on one side. And one was his action. Okay. Three are those things that he approved of tacitly. But there are other things that form part of the Sunnah that we also should do our best to realize that they're not exactly the same thing as these. One is al-kitaba, okay, or writing information. writing information, for example, to some of the Sahaba. Al-Ishara here means any kind of motion that you do that has a meaning to it. For example, during the what we call this sign language, we put in parentheses. What do you call these? Quotation marks. We put them in quotation marks. And for example, during the Hajj, the Prophet ﷺ was asked by some people that they did one act of the Hajj before another act, and instead of answering them, he made a motion, and this motion that he made implied that there's nothing wrong with what they did. Okay. So these motions have different meanings to them. Sometimes they mean approval, sometimes they mean disapproval. Yeah. Okay, I'm doing this for a specific reason. Okay, for example, this one. Okay, those things that the Prophet ﷺ considered doing. Okay, acts that he considered doing. And he did not actually do them, but he considered doing them. What else might there be? I forget anything? Okay. If you can read that. And these are the acts that the Prophet ﷺ specifically did not do, or he avoided these acts. Pardon me? No, not the Turks. Okay, these are acts that he specifically avoided doing. This also, again, is going to have a role in usul al-fiqh. Actually, we could take the whole rest of the semester just discussing these topics, but I don't think you people would like that like that too much. And the last one is let's see if I missed one. It's getting towards the bottom of the. Okay. Al-Allah. What's the meaning of Allah here? Huh? Pardon me? Call? Okay. Pointing out the reason for something. Pardon me? Okay. This is a Zarkashi. Another ulama of usul al-fiqh, they divided the sunnah into 8 types. Pardon me? Pointing out. This is not but this is out. Okay. Huh? I think the first one who did it, was Zarkashi, but I'm not sure if he was the first. Now, with respect to the statements of the Prophet ﷺ, the same rules apply to these statements as apply to the Qur'an. Okay? Okay, in other words, we deal with the Prophet ﷺ statements, whether it's a general statement or a specific statement, whether it is unconstrained or constrained, we deal with them in the same way as we deal with the verses of the Qur'an. So we're going to leave that for later, because right now we want to deal with topics that specifically concern the Sunnah. This last one here could be either a statement or an action. Depends on exactly how it's done. The way we're going to discuss these, and we're not actually going to discuss all of them because it would take too much time. We might discuss this one. But what we're going to do is we're going to call these here from 3 to 7. These are actions which are non-explicit. Okay. Okay, those are non-explicit actions. And some of them, whether you call it an action or not, obviously, for example, number 6, number 7, number 3, and it's questionable whether you call them an action or not, so we'll just deal with that by calling them non-explicit actions. And this one we'll call explicit actions. Okay?
So what's wrong with this partition?
What's wrong with it? Does there always have to be something wrong in this class?
You made a comment earlier that
yeah, apparently Ahmed is not very happy with it too. Not very happy with this. I am very happy with it. Okay? Now, with respect to actions of the Prophet ﷺ, explicit actions, there's many different types. And we're going to, inshallah, get into those. That's basically what we're going to be discussing. So if we have some time, we might discuss taqreer or one of these others. It could be either a statement or an action. If it's an action, it depends on how it's done. It might be by ishara, might be by kitaba. And it could actually a subset of these. Pardon me?
Do you have any examples on action?
Right now? I'll think of something. Now, before we move on to discuss these actions of the Prophet ﷺ, the specific actions, we have to prove that they are in fact hujjah. Are the actions of the Prophet ﷺ hujjah? And are they actually a source of law and authority? Any ideas about that? No? What's your proof that it is hujjah? Yeah. Wow. Yani the best thing would be to prove it from the Qur'an. Okay, and these kinds of proof might be just referring to his statements. Because وَمَا أَتَاكُمْ, yani what he gives you, yani by... Why don't we stick with Quran first? Okay, what about this verse? Yani the verse says that if you truly love Allah, then follow me, and Allah will forgive your sins. What's the meaning of ittiba', following? Yani, does it mean following his commands? Okay, his commands and prohibitions? Or does it also mean following his actions? No? Both of them. What's your proof for that? Give me some Jahiliyyah poetry and to Okay, let's just stick with this one first for the time being. Okay, what? Okay, and it does in fact include both. And in fact in the Quran sometimes it is used explicitly for the actions of the specific people. Yeah, I'm saying that sometimes it's used specifically for the actions. It means both.
Now, about the first question on the actions of the Prophet.
Hey.
I'm saying not all actions.
Okay, we'll get to that. Of course. That's what we're here for. Okay, and the other verse the Mustafa mentioned, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. What's the meaning of uswa? Well, the verse, by the way, says that you have in the messenger the best The best model or the best example to follow. Uswa means what? The word in the verse is uswa. So it has more than one meaning, by the way. What does it mean in this verse? And you're saying it in English, so it means qudwa, or example. Okay. Now some people object to this, using this verse as a proof, and for saying that the Prophet's actions should be followed, because they said that this verse is referring to a particular event about having sabr or having patience during the time of battle. So they're saying that the verse is saying that you have in the Prophet ﷺ a perfect example of having patience during time of battle. So you should also have patience during the time of battle. But actually in the Arabic language, and you would not use uswa for someone if you mean just follow him in one thing. In other words, just following him in patience, you cannot use the word uswa. Uswa is a more general term meaning, and he is an example for you to follow in general. So we have from the Qur'an, we have some proofs that the actions of the Prophet ﷺ are hujjah. By the way, there is not ijma' on this point. There is not ijma' that the actions of the Prophet ﷺ are hujjah. Some of the ulama, even some of the well-known ulama, like al-Qarhi of the Hanafis and many of the Sha'ira, they do not consider it hujjah unless there is an explicit evidence that it is hujjah for us. And from the hadith also there are some examples that we could use as proofs that the Prophet ﷺ, that his actions are hujjah. For example, when he said that when those three people asked about his the way he worshipped, and each one said that he would do something other than what the Prophet ﷺ did, he said, whoever turns from my sunnah, then he is not from me. Well, here the Prophet ﷺ used the word his sunnah, or when he said my sunnah, he's actually referring to his actions. And he thus clearly showing that from the Prophet ﷺ's point of view, his sunnah includes his actions. Okay. So now we come to the question, as Brother Uthman mentioned, that obviously, by the way, there's another, with respect to the second verse, there's another problem with that verse. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ. Lakum means what in general? Doesn't mean the same thing as alaykum. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not say alaykum. Alaykum would imply that following the Prophet ﷺ is obligatory. But this verse uses lakum instead of alaykum. What's the response to that? What's the rest of the verse? لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن يرجو الله واليوم الآخر. The ending of the verse shows that anyone who truly believes or is looking forward or looking towards the day of judgment, then he should take the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ as his role model. So by itself, the first part of the verse in fact doesn't imply that it is obligatory to follow the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. But that condition at the end changes that nature. So as I said, as Uthman mentioned, let's ignore these for a while. We're not going to discuss these today for sure. As Uthman mentioned, obviously not all of the actions of the Prophet ﷺ are hujjah. And as far as I know, there's no alim who said that all of the actions of the Prophet ﷺ or let's put it this way, not all of the actions of the Prophet ﷺ are qudwa. Not all of the actions of the Prophet ﷺ are meant to be followed by the ummah. Okay? So now we have to figure out, we have to determine then, what are the actions of the Prophet ﷺ? And again, we're just talking now about the explicit actions. We're going to divide these into different categories, and then we'll determine which one of these categories are in fact qudwa, are meant to be followed, and which one are not, or which ones are not. Any questions so far before I erase these 8 categories? And the reason, by the way, Uthman or Ahmed, The reason they are split into these 8 is because each one from usul al-fiqh point of view has a different effect. And each one has a different strength. And that's why it is divided into these categories. Yes, sure. How do you know, assuming taqreer, what we mean by this is that you don't do anything, that means you approve. Okay, that's what this is saying. If you don't do anything, it means you approve. So, yeah, that's why we call it non-explicit action. The point is, if we get to this later, and the point is that if the Prophet ﷺ sees something wrong, it is an obligation upon him to correct it. So if something happens in front of him, there's some conditions for this. Obviously, the thing has to occur by someone who is a believer. Not, for example, if one of the Arabs, one of the kuffar does something and he doesn't say anything, is not what we're talking about. But if one of the believers, and even we can exclude the munafiqeen, if one of the believers does something in front of him and he does not correct it, then from usul al-fiqh point of view, this means he is approving of it. Okay. So you cannot get a case where he's neither approving or disapproving. Is that clear? Now we're going to do a flow chart. You can tell that I had a lot of time with nothing to do during the past 10 days or so. I'm going to do a flow chart to determine what are the different acts of the Prophet ﷺ and what is their, in general we're going to state whether or not they're qudwa or not, and then we'll discuss them more explicitly. So the first thing is that the Prophet ﷺ, his act, what he did, may be related to someone else, or simply something he did by himself. Okay, that's the first question. What I mean by may be related to someone else. Okay. So for example, if the Prophet ﷺ ordered someone to do something, that order is a kind of action, and we want to get rid of that kind of actions right now, or something that he did by himself. In other words, did not involve anyone else. If it involves someone else, then it's called, what do they call it? And it's something we will discuss it very briefly later. Is that right? Does that look right? Okay. Now? Okay, these are actions that have to do with someone else. That is, what we're going to come up here now is different categories of the actions of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So this is the first. Those are actions that are related to someone else. That's what it means there. Okay, so if we want to talk about types of explicit actions, remember we're just doing that first category, explicit actions. Okay, we have the first type. Because, by the way, before I get into these, let me just say something about the actions of the Prophet ﷺ in general. Number one, most of the difference of opinion in fiqh, is related to the actions of the Prophet ﷺ and the different ways that it is to be interpreted. Okay, most of the difference of opinion. And you can trace it back to hadith which describes the Prophet ﷺ doing something and one person interpreted one way and somebody else interpreted another way. So that means the better we understand, or the better, actually the ulama understand, not us, but the better the scholars understand this topic of the actions of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, And this will remove many of the differences of opinion that you find amongst the ulama. Secondly, it is the topic, the actions of the Prophet ﷺ is a topic that is not dealt with very well in the books of Usul al-Fiqh. And in the books of Usul al-Fiqh, it is not dealt with very well. And in general, they are discussing one type of action, which we will mention at the bottom over here. And they never really explain that they are discussing that type of action and not other types of action. Even, for example, Ibn Qudama, one of the best of the Hanbali scholars, in his book on Usul al-Fiqh, and he didn't mention the actions of the Prophet ﷺ at all. And he didn't even mention it. What's the author's name of this book? Khallaf. Well, how much did he discuss it? And maybe one page, I think, something like that. So it is a topic that, as I said, most of the differences in fiqh are related to this topic, yet many of the scholars themselves have not discussed this topic properly. And finally, there's only actually 4 works. There's only 4 works that are explicitly about the actions of the Prophet ﷺ. And when it comes to the statements of the Prophet, and it has many works discussing am wa khas, general and specific statements and so forth, you'll find many works. But when it comes to the actions of the Prophet ﷺ, there's only 4 works that explicitly discuss the actions of the Prophet ﷺ in detail. 2 of them are makhtut, or not published. Hey, very good. It is already a PhD dissertation. Muhammad al-Akhir, Af'al al-Rasul, from Azhar University. So, and if you don't have those 2 books that are available, as I said, 2 of them are makhtut, or in manuscript form, then you'll not be able actually to really read about the actions of the Prophet ﷺ in the detail that this is necessary to have a grasp. They both, by the way, have the same name. You would be surprised, of course, by what the name is. One is by Muhammad al-Ashqar. It's about 750 pages. It is his PhD dissertation. And the other one is by Muhammad Abdul Qadir. This one I don't really recommend very much because it is, you can read about 100 pages without getting the point of what he's what he's trying to say. And this one is very clear, very easy to read. The other one isn't that clear. Now he's a professor at Qura University, but this was not his PhD dissertation. Yeah, this is just he's written a series of books on Usul al-Fiqh. One of the books that he wrote was about topics that do not belong to Usul al-Fiqh. Yeah, yes, I think, that's the first one. Topics that do not belong to Usul al-Fiqh. And of course he discusses them in detail. And he could just list them on a piece of paper, and that's the whole book. But so if you don't, this by the way is in the library in Denver, in the mosque in Denver. The 2 that are makhtut, one is by someone named Abu Shama. He wrote in the 600s, and the other one is by he wrote in the 700s. Ala'i. He's very famous in hadith. Hadith. But these 2, by the way, are not complete, as also is Muhammad al-Qadr. And they do not discuss all of the topic. They are makhtut, as I said. For me, makhtut means as if it was never written. Pardon? Why? For one thing, I will not have an opportunity to find them, most likely. And even if I find them, I won't be able to read them. So, the first one, as I said, we'll discuss this one later. Actions dealing with others. Okay. So if it is something that he did by himself, has nothing to do with anyone else, and he could have been Or it could have been the act could have been. No. I didn't lose you already, right? We're making a list. Okay, we have now one action, one category. Yani when we're done with this one, we're going to have a list of different types of actions. For the camera. Because this flow chart, as I call it, is going to move over here. The list is here. How did we get this list? By going through this. See, this is, by the way, supposed to be a teaching tool, make things clear, make things easier. So the act that the Prophet ﷺ performed could have been due to his natural disposition, or already leaving, or because of the customs of his people at that time. Remember, the Prophet ﷺ was a human being just like any other human being. And he, as his nature, and he was not different than any other human being. So therefore, he had certain actions which were part of his natural disposition. He liked some things, and he disliked some things. Just because he's a human being. He liked some type of food, and he didn't like other types of food. And when he smiled, his face took on a certain form. When he got mad, his face took on a certain form. All these are parts of his natural disposition. Similarly, some of the deeds he performed was because of the customs of his people. Okay. In other words, they used to dress a certain way. They used to build their houses out of certain material and so forth. Or some of the acts that he performed could have been for some worldly benefits, or to remove some shall we say worldly harm. Okay, so it could have been any of these three, or the act that he did could have been in implementing the Sharia. Could have been part of his implementing the Sharia. Okay. Now we can put all that in a box to make it look pretty. These three here acts out of because of his natural disposition, or because of the customs of his people, or for some worldly benefit, or to remove some worldly harm. And these are three now separate categories. I write them here in Arabic and over there in English. There are three separate categories again because each one, from Usul al-Fiqh point of view, each one will have its own importance. Okay. The first one is Jubilee, if you can't read it. Huh? These are the acts that he did out of his natural disposition. Okay, the second one are and the third one is في أمور الدنيوية. Is that right? Dunyawiyya. Dunya. Is that right? نعم. Dunya. Okay. So these three are three more categories. One are actions out of natural disposition. Actions out of the custom of his people. And fourth, actions for worldly purpose. Okay?
How can you say actions out of natural disposition and there is an ayah saying stand upon Allah?
First of all, this ayah, as I said, it refers to the Qur'an. But even if it's not referring to the Qur'an, and it will not include his actions. وَمَنْ يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ. And he said that what he speaks. And that's the verse that you cannot apply to action. Right? And you cannot interpret that verse to also mean action.
But even in this position is guided by Allah.
Okay. That's okay. What these things here, okay, we're getting a little bit ahead. Category 2, 3, or 4. Categories 2, 3, and 4 over there, in general, these are not to be taken as qudwa. They are not to be taken as examples for us. All they show simply is that the acts that he performed here, all of them are permissible. They are not, and if you want to define sunnah from usul al-fiqh point of view, these are not part of the sunnah.
They are not sunnah, you cannot do that
and they're all mubah. They're all mubah. But you cannot do them and say they are sunnah. That this is mustahab. Mustahab is different from mubah.
Can we define the limitation of
we're going to discuss these in more detail. Now we're just coming up with the different categories. We're going to end up with, I think, 10 categories, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute, you said 2 things. Okay. Okay. So the next question is that okay. So now let's go from here to over here. Which one? Which category are you talking about? Which category over here? 2, 3, and 4? Yeah, for example, I think I gave examples. He used to like, for example, pumpkin. Okay, that's out of his natural disposition. He used to like sweets. That's a sunnah I follow. We'll call it sunnah now. You can custom, and he used to wear a certain type of clothing, which was the clothing of his people, and he used to travel a certain way. That was based on the custom of his people. For worldly purpose, and sometimes he used to do business dealings, and when he died, and he had something mortgaged with a Jewish person. Okay, no one says that's sunnah, that everyone when they die they should have something mortgaged with the Jewish person. Okay, it means that it's permissible. Okay, what I'm saying is that these actions do not form a qudwa or an example for us that we should follow. But all of them, of course, are mubah. Everything the Prophet ﷺ did here is proof that these things are mubah or permissible. Is that clear so far? Am I losing anyone yet? Pardon me?
So this is not how we do.
Yeah, we still have quite a few categories. But if he is following the Sharia or implementing the Sharia, and the act that he performed could be a type of يعني miraculous act or يعني معجز. A miraculous act or not. Okay, if it is a miraculous act, we call it, or they call it, مثال خارق للأعداد. Okay, actions يعني of a miraculous nature. Okay. Now, what do you think? Are these qudwa or not? But obviously, these again do not perform. These are not the type of qudwa, and we're not expected to take these as sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and follow them. No, we are not expected to do them. Okay, al-Isra wal-Miraj, when the Prophet ﷺ went to the heavens, that's not something that we are expected to do. But it is something that he did following the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's not specific for him. And actually the first one who did that, apparently from the hadith, the first one who did that was one of the Sahaba, not the Prophet ﷺ. Hey, for example, these miracles were, more food appeared for him, and so forth. We're not expected to follow those. What? Or not is going this way. Not is going this way. Yes is going that way. Actually, it should be in the form of a question. Yes would be over there. No is over here. So now, if it is again implementing the Sharia, it could be something particular for the Prophet or not. Huh? No, not always go down. But what's this category called? I think everyone knows this. Something particular for the Prophet. Yeah, what we call it? Al-Khasa'is. Okay, so the action could be something just for the Prophet. For example, the Prophet married more than 4 wives. This was something particular for the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ was not allowed to receive sadaqah and other things. Actually, this, by the way, this category is very small. Maybe 16 items at the most that are authentic and truly narrated back to the Prophet ﷺ. So we're talking actually about a very small category there. I assume the one before it is. Now, is this, by the way, qudwa? Is this something that we should take as an example? Okay, obviously, by definition, obviously not. How are we doing so far? We have anything which is that we should be following? No. These two are few. But these three are not. These three are not few. No, what we're trying to do is get down to see what are the actions that are qudwa. No. We can't start with qudwa and we start with his actions and start throwing them out one by one. Yeah, positive. Those that we did what?
punishments for the
Okay, we'll get to that. Don't worry. Yeah, well, don't worry. We're going to get to that. Okay. Now again, if he's implementing the Sharia, okay, and if the action he performs, could have been, and it's something which explains a verse in the Qur'an, explains the meaning of the Qur'an. Okay, or it could have been something, implementing the command of the Qur'an. What's that? 2, that gives us 8. Okay. Implementing the Sharia, and the action that he did, the action could have been related to a specific revelation. So the action that he did could have been related to a specific revelation, a verse in the Quran, either explaining the meaning of the Quran or implementing the command of the Quran. Or it may not be related to any particular verse in the Quran. To any specific revelation. I'm running out of room. Okay, the first one, which is explained in the Quran, this is called al-bayan. And explaining. Yeah. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, orders in the Quran for something to be done, and the Prophet ﷺ does it, that is this part implementing the Quran. That is called has two names. Al-imtithali or tanfidhi. So now we have 7 and 8 actions explaining the Quran and actions implementing the Quran. هذا في البيان. What do you think about here now? Are these two قدوة? Definitely, okay. Definitely قدوة. And they are definitely part of the sunnah that we are to do our best to follow. Where should I go now? Pardon me? Next classroom? Gee, at UC Berkeley, we used to always have those. We throw them up and the next one comes down. And you have some? Could you go bring them? Okay. If it is not related to revelation, it might be an action done while waiting for revelation. Where? Which one? This one, implementing the Sharia, the action could have been related to a specific revelation. The action may be related to someone else or simply by himself. Yeah, acts. Yeah. No, this is all under this one now. Now this is the way flowchart works. All of these actions underneath here, which go down here, these are all actions that the Prophet ﷺ did by himself. They do not involve anyone else. Okay. Now we keep taking different types of actions out of it. We're now down to here. Here, I said, in implementing the Sharia, the action could have been related to a specific revelation, such as explaining the Qur'an or implementing the Qur'an, or it may not have been related to revelation. Okay. There's two things. Number one, the Qur'an came down, for example, in a general way, the verses in a general way, as we talked about before. It was the Prophet ﷺ's job to explain it. He could either explain it by words or implementing it. Okay, his actions explain the meaning of that verse. Otherwise, there's other verses which are clear. The Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering the Muslims to do something, and the Prophet ﷺ did those things. So that's how we get this category. They are different, and the way we deal with them will be different. And this one, again, these two are qudwa, without any question about it. Now, if it's not related to a specific revelation, it could have been something the Prophet ﷺ did while waiting for revelation. There's going to be supposed to be another box below that, by the way, which is okay. Or not. Yeah, inshallah. Okay, this type of action, it is known as what you did للانتظار الوحي الوحي. Okay, let's put an eye up here because we're running out of room. Actions while waiting for revelation. Okay, now is this one qudwa? Depends on what? Okay. If the revelation that finally comes agrees with the action of the Prophet ﷺ, it is qudwa. And it is something we should look to as an example. If the revelation comes that disagrees with what the Prophet ﷺ did while waiting for the revelation, then we have to neglect his action and follow the revelation. And then the last one, after this box, is none of the above. And something that doesn't fit into any of those categories. This is the most controversial topic, perhaps in all of usul fiqh. This none of the above category. And it is called, this one down here, after you went through all these, don't remember, today it comes before or after. Okay, just okay. None of the above. And it doesn't fit into any of these other categories, yet there are actions of the Prophet. He has a good example.
Because there wasn't that from the Prophet he wasn't so he went and turned back, then went again. And then after a while, the Umar came to the same path. And he did the same thing that the Prophet said.
Yeah, this is what? An example of what? No. This is probably this one.
It's not he wanted to do something. He wanted to do it.
You're talking about Ibn Umar or you're talking about the Prophet Muhammad? Hey, this is most likely here. Either this one, and why did he go that way? Maybe there was something in the road in his way, so he went around it. Or this one, it will be one of those. And for example, let's see, praying Salat al-Eid outside. Where would you put it? Well, obviously, it's not because of his natural disposition. It's not because of the customs of his people. They don't have Salat al-Eid. When I mean outside, I mean not in the mosque. Outside. It doesn't seem to be for some worldly benefit. It doesn't seem to be miraculous. There's no evidence that it's just for the Prophet ﷺ. Is it implementing the Qur'an or explaining the Qur'an? Maybe it's Salat al-Eid itself, but having Salat al-Eid outside of the mosque, you'll have trouble. If it is an action that he did while waiting for revelation, well, we know that's not the case because there was no revelation that came down. So therefore it comes under here.
You're saying that the Bible includes everything that's not related to revelation?
No. Everything that doesn't fit into these categories. Not related to a specific revelation in the Qur'an. Yeah. Okay, maybe 90 is high, but yeah. That's the problem. That's why it is a very important topic and has to be understood. And what do? Do you say that praying outside the mosque is wajib? Why not? See, you all have already your own usul al-fiqh. You don't say that praying outside the mosque is wajib. Why not? Many usuliyin would say yes. Many usuliyin would say yes, it is wajib. Because it is this core category and this category, whatever the Prophet ﷺ did is wajib for us to do. Others would say no, it's simply mubah. Others would say, okay, you have to look for the asbab before you can put it into these. Some of, I believe, the Malikis, they said that the reason the Prophet ﷺ did it is because the mosque was too small to hold everyone. And in other words, for them it's not the sunnah that needs to be followed. Okay? So this none of the above category is very, very important.
What if the Prophet used to, do something so you can have
you mean like if he's talking and he happens to, for example, during the khutbah, they said that he only moved, I think, this hand and this finger. Yeah, okay, we're going to discuss this in more detail right now. Yeah. Okay, that's what I'm saying. I said that some of the usuliyin, I didn't say me, some of the usuliyin, they said for the Prophet ﷺ it might have been something mubah, but for us it's wajib because we have to follow the Prophet ﷺ.
So it doesn't have sunnah and sunnah mu'akkada and wajib.
They do, but it would be probably mostly here. Not here. And for those people. And okay, we can talk about this right now for a second. This 10th category. There's 3 ways to approach this 10th category. Okay? One group, I have no place to I have no place to write. One group says, okay, one group says that whatever the Prophet ﷺ did has a bearing upon us. And in other words, we are supposed to follow it.
That's true.
And
here's one of the...
No, that's not true, but anyway. Let me finish. Okay, they're saying that it doesn't matter whether the action, regardless of what the action was for the Prophet ﷺ, we have to do it. Okay, that's one group. They said regardless of what the action was for the Prophet ﷺ, we have to do it. Or actually this group can be split into 3. One group says it's obligatory for us to do it. For in other words, Sunnah praying Eid outside of the mosque is wajib. Another one said all of these are mustahab. Okay? So praying Sunnah outside is mustahab. Another one says that they are simply mubah. The second group says that, look, we just don't take it into this category, but we try to look at it and see, and were some of these actions obligatory on the Prophet? And were some of them mustahab? And were some of them simply mubah? Mustahab is something preferred, recommended to do. It's not less than obligatory. Okay? So they say that we should follow the same thing as the Prophet ﷺ. If it was wajib for the Prophet ﷺ, then it's wajib for us. If it was mustahab for the Prophet ﷺ, and preferred for him, then it's preferred for us. If it was mubah for the Prophet ﷺ, then it was mubah for us. That's another way of looking at it. Yeah, there's ways of determining. If I get into that now, it will be... And the third group, forget what they said. The third group says that this category has nothing to do with us. Because they might be from the khata'is of the Prophet ﷺ, yani those particular deeds of the Prophet ﷺ. This is many of the Ash'ira, they have this view. Okay? Now the problem is when you read books on usul al-fiqh, this is the one that they're usually talking about. Sometimes they don't state it explicitly, or they just kind of pass, and they mention this word, but unless you really know what they're talking about, you can get confused. In other words, they won't mention these other categories, and they're just talking about this one. This is one of the most important aspects of the actions of the Prophet ﷺ. Determining what falls into each category, first of all, determine what falls into each category, and then if it falls into none of them, you have to determine how should we treat it.
I feel that I have a problem.
Sure.
The verses that we discussed for others that says that the by itself would be a belief that Rasulullah did something that is not from his khata,
Why do you take these out?
Because there are other verses that contradict that position.
Okay.
We were ordered to marry before.
Okay, what about these?
I'll tell you what about this would be something logical, but it could have a value for anybody who is not from that system, or somebody living in the mountains of India, and you cannot know where they might think that's not logical in the country.
So you're saying from logic point of view, then? Okay, so what you're saying is that all of these actions should be wajib for us.
It should be at least true. If
all of them should be. Okay, suppose there's some that we know from the Prophet's action that he did it maybe once and then he never did it again. It's not mubah in that case? Okay. So you're saying that if the Prophet ﷺ did something even once and the rest of his life he did the opposite thing. No, that's what I'm saying. No, you didn't. For example, the Prophet ﷺ, it is reported that he one time urinated while standing. Okay, should that be wajib for us or sunnah? Sunnah according to what he means by sunnah, I don't know, or mubah.
The thing is you said some contradicting points. You said
Okay, fine. What is your conclusion about this? You're saying that they all should be at least sunnah. Okay, we will get to them, don't worry. I'm not finished by what I said.
What is it? One of this action mujarrad was it was reported he was hurting or was limping or something. Should he follow this?
Limping would probably be under here.
No. It's not something maybe you're hurting.
Yeah, that's hurting is here. Hurting is here. The Prophet ﷺ, when you hit them and you hurt them, that's here. And if he should limp, because when he fell off the horse and he limped, that's here. And you cannot argue that anywhere else here. Anyway.
What is the dalil against the people who are saying that the custom that the Rasulullah used to put on some jubba?
You're talking about this one now?
Yeah. What is the dalil that against those people that said, oh, this is the sunnah of Allah. We have to do it.
Inshallah, we'll get to that. Okay? Salat al-Tarawih? It's a good question. Where would you put it, Uthman? Most likely, Tarawih, if you consider it the same thing as Salat al-Layl, which is actually what it is, according to my madhab, it would be here. Now notice that there's some actions which have aspects of both. His praying Salat al-Layl is here. Okay? That's implementing the command of the Qur'an. Doing it in Jama'ah might be here. No, what I'm saying is that Salat al-Tarawih, he said, Tarawih is, according to my madhab, no different from Salat al-Layl. Salat al-Layl for the Prophet ﷺ is implementing the Qur'an. Okay? But as I said, one action might have more than one aspect to it. For example, the Salat, praying, is definitely explaining the Qur'an and implementing the Qur'an. But there's some aspects of the prayer which all the ulama agree are down here. Hey. The Jama'ah part is here. Hey, the Jama'ah part. Hey, we'll get this. So have I perked your curiosity? Hey. No, we started 20 minutes late, so we still have some time for questions. We'll not move on to another topic. هذا الفعل المجرد in usul al-fiqh al-Ash'ari basically is talking about the writings of al-Baqillani and those who follow al-Baqillani.
So it's not because they are Ash'ari, it's their point of view, not for them to be Ash'ari.
If they are from the followers of al-Baqillani, who was the Imam of al-Ash'ari at his time, especially in usul al-fiqh. And Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari wrote a book about usul al-fiqh, but it is not existing anymore as far as we know. And al-Baqillani, he quoted him quite a bit in his work. Al-Baqillani's work is still maqtut, but some of the works from his students have come down to us, are published, well known. Any other question about this? So it is an important topic. As I said, most of the difference of opinion in usul al-fiqh are about the actions of the Prophet ﷺ, and in particular about this kind. Well, before you go, Naif, the principal, the director, and all those sort of things has enough.
We have, I was going to have